Everybody, how's it going today? I wanted to go over another book review. This one's on The Essential Drucker by Peter F. Drucker. He's considered by many around the world as the founding father of the modern MBA system. He is really one of the guru experts when it comes to like managing oneself, managing teams, managing organizations. He's worked with the UN. I think it was for like a period of time with the U.S. government as well, etc. And he also owned his own consulting firm when though he was alive, as well as he has his own institute as well. I think it's called the Drucker Institute in the U.S. So he's a really impactful man base, and he's and if you guys watch a lot of his YouTube videos as well, he will go more into details about how you can better manage yourself, etc. But today I'd like to go over this book here, The Essential Drucker, basically. So how it's going to work basically is that I will first explain how the book is actually into three different parts basically, and explain of course what are those parts. Then I'll go into my own interpretation of like a really important part, which I think is also relevant for you today, the viewer. And then of course I won't go over everything of this book, so you guys can actually read the book if you guys want and stuff, and then of course there you guys will find more knowledge on top of what I will add now. So the book is basically divided into three parts. So one is called management basically. And in the management part, basically, first of all, Peter Drucker, starts out with how the management history of the managing organizations and stuff evolved, basically, from Frederick Winslow Taylor towards like more throughout the 20th century, basically, going into the 21st century. I think this book was actually written in the 21st century. I'll check real quick, just to make sure. Yeah, so it was written in 2001. So it was like written in the 21st century. So he basically does like a historical timeline scale basically of the whole 20th century basically when it comes to management, and I think he goes even a bit more before 20th century, the end of the 19th century, starting of the 20th century, throughout the 20th century, right? And he basically goes on to explain how it's like evolved and changed a bit, as well as some like the tips about what the like management is according to him. What are entrepreneurial values according to him, basically, how you can better manage people within an organization, etc. So that's what that whole part is about. Then this second part pertains more to me and you, really, and that's about the individual, basically. And he goes about speaking about what are effective decisions, how to not waste your time, basically, and some other important thoughts, like about contribution, the educated person, second half of your life, leadership work, etc. And then the third part, Peter Drucker labels is called society, basically, and in that he goes into how we've actually shifted, basically, from this agrarian education-based society in the world to this more knowledge society in the world, right? If you guys read the book as well, Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, he goes more into this as well, how we don't live actually in the world which our education system was founded on, basically, and then I'll read something about that, and then I'll go into like a really small detail of that at the end. So starting off, of course, I wanted to like skip directly, to the individual because it all pertains more to our everyday lives, right? So I'm gonna only go through like those two parts within it, basically, and then of course you guys can read the rest and stuff, and they'll extrapolate any more useful knowledge and stuff which you guys need for your guys' life if you guys want it, from this book. But it's a really helpful book, really. So the first part, Peter Drucker goes into saying know thy time, and it's a really extensive list, of like the reasons why a lot of people waste their time, whether it's not, delegating tasks to other people, which can be more useful because of misinformation, because of incompetency, etc. Right? So there's all these reasons why the individual in this new world wastes his or her time. And an example to actually get out of that, really, which I've implemented and stuff. I'm actually a recent university graduate, right? And from this book, basically, what I got out was one really helpful tip, right? Peter Drucker called it his zero draft, and what he meant by that was that if you're doing what I did, and you're studying arts and stuff, or you're studying something related to like writing a lot of essays and stuff, Peter Drucker said the best thing to do really is to write one rough draft essay, complete essay without any phones, without any distractions, without any Facebook, without any Instagram, without any Twitter, without any friends, nothing. Only you, yourself, in a place, basically writing a rough draft of your entire essay, basically, right? And then, of course, Peter Drucker says afterwards, basically, all you have to do is just, revise over the essay and like change stuff here and there, shift stuff, strategize, basically, over, what though you will keep and what you won't keep. And I think that's so really helped me throughout my university years, the importance of like not wasting time, because a lot of the times now, for instance, which I've seen a lot of my friends do as well as other university classmates, right, is that nowadays when you're in university, you have the tendency to be sitting down writing an essay and stuff, but then you're on your phone, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, looking up stuff, playing around, speaking with friends, talking with friends here and there. And that actually wastes a lot of time, because then you don't get anything done. So if you were to remove everything and just focus on that for like about 4 to 5 hours, simply on that, and get it done, well, then all you have to do is just go back on it, revise here and there, and that's it. So I think that was a really helpful tip, basically, right? But at the end of the day, Peter Drucker says that the knowledge worker, in this book, basically, he regarding the individual, he talks everything about the knowledge worker. He talks about how the knowledge worker must manage his or herself, basically, and must know what are his or herself's weaknesses, etc. Right? If you guys read his book, Managing Oneself, you guys will understand as well, right? There are important questions to ask. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How do you learn better? Who do you learn better with? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations in life? How can you remove some of your disabling ignorance which you may have? Which so impedes you to like learn more, do more, contribute more, etc. How can you become more effective? All these wonderful, important questions needed to be asked, basically, right? You guys can, of course, find out in his book, Managing Oneself, and that's another really important book. But at the end of the day, Peter Drucker says that the knowledge worker must know how to manage thy time. That's the most important part. Managing thy time simply means, basically, how can you use your little time more effectively in life, right? Now, of course, there are people who say you cannot manage your time. You can only set priorities really in your life, and then achieve those priorities. But even then, it's the same thing. It's still about managing something, having a list of goals, dreams, whatever, and aspirations, and then going after that. Basically, that's the whole main goal about it. So I think for me, of course, that was a really important part in the book. And then another important part in the book is the decision-making process. Now, what I'm going to talk to you guys about now is about a 5-step process. And then I will first list out those steps, and then I will give like the relevant topic of my life and how I have applied some of those steps to my life, really, So the first one is basically that the knowledge worker knows that the least effective decisions you make, the better. In that sense, it's not about making a ton of those decisions. It's only about making a few of them, and a few of them, the better. Less is more, and we'll explain why afterwards. No, actually, I'll just explain why now. If you guys read Gary Keller and Jay Papasan's book, The One Thing, they explain in the book how we've all been fooled to actually think that we have to finish everything in life, and that we have to do everything in life, that we have to be competent at everything in life. Gary Keller, which is an American real estate billionaire, said no. He said no. In life, it's not about doing everything in life. It's about only the focusing on one or two things, which will get your most effective outcome, which will get your 80-20 rule, right? So they'll focus on the stuff that results in 20% of your effort, but then later gives you 80% of the outcome, basically, right? And that's what you have to focus on in life, Forget everyone else, right? The knowledge worker knows that is not about saying yes to everything. It's about saying no, yes to that one thing which interests me. And that's all you guys have to worry about. So in making effective decisions, right, the first step of the process would be that you guys have to decide whether the effective decision which you guys are making is either strategic or it's generic, right? If it's strategic, that means it happens only once, basically, and so it has its own thing to it, right? And if it's generic, that means you have to apply a rule and a policy to it, right? Because it happens on a frequent basis, right? When the rule is when the decision is a generic one, right? However you guys make up the rule or the policy has to be adapted to the certain circumstance which you guys are in, basically, right? So and the conditions for a decision, whether it's strategic or generic, simply is that they have to be both impactful and also resonate. And what I mean by resonate, right? When most people think about decisions, right, they don't simply think about making one, basically, and that decision affects that outcome, and that's it. But what Peter F. Drucker says is that the effective executive or the knowledge worker knows that any effective decision he or she is to make should resonate and also affect other, decisions, adoptions, consequences, circumstances, etc. So I think that's a really important part to actually point out, right? Now, of course, number two, of course, is this what are the boundary conditions, right? So, of course, when you are mapping out, or when you are deciding on what effective decisions to make, right? Peter Drucker says, and every single decision must have a start and must have an ending to it. So you have to grasp an actual boundary to it, right? Now, within that boundary conditions, right, there has to be specifications towards how that decision will be made, right? Because if there's no specification, then it's still ineffectual, right? Because in order for it to be effective, you have to know exactly what are the specifications within the decisions which you make, basically. And then it's kind of like a risk-taking judgment, sort of. And then number 3 is what's right. So in my sense, basically, how I try to determine all the effective decisions that I make in my life personally. I'm not saying in my job or in my university, just on me personally when I make decisions, right? I ask the question, for instance, what contributes to my to the greatest outcome, or what contributes to the most effective outcome for me, basically. And then I go towards that, right? Remember, science really is not about yes, right, wrong, wrong, right, yes, no, black, white, no. Science really is more about what is more accurate and what is least accurate. And that's how you have to act as well when you do like approach life. So really, it's just about finding what is the most accurate outcome towards the specific situation or effective decision which I have to make. What is the most effective outcome, and then I choose from there. Now, number 4, of course, is that it's okay to have effective decisions, but you have to take action. Peter Drucker said it many times in his book. You know, he says the greatest wisdom not applied to action and behavior is meaningless data. So really, you know, you can make the least amount of the effective decisions, but you have to actually take action, because if you don't, it's only a good intention, but it's no real decision. Now, of course, and then of course, number 5, of course, once you take action, well, then you gain feedback analysis on it, right? And then of course that leads you to optionality, right? So if you gain feedback and you say, well, no, this is not the most effective outcome, when of course you will know then to like change your course, you know, change your alternative or anything, right? But what Peter F. Drucker says is to never be so close-minded, basically, that you only think one decision will always fit all. That's what people call the man with the hammer syndrome, in the sense that every problem for that man looks like a nail, basically, right? Where like you can have a hammer and you can just nail in that actual nail, right? But as we know in life, right, you cannot apply the same decision on every single circumstance, right? So of course, you know, effective decisions therefore will be, you know, situational, based, you know, even though it's so generic and you've applied a certain rule to that rule still has to be situational. So it has to be towards the certain situation which you're in, basically, and that's how it works. So I'll give you guys an example, of course, as I said, about something in my life, basically, right? So I read a lot, basically, and I read the book, Anthony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within. And in that book, he talks about the importance of, you know, priming, the importance of, you know, getting up every single day and sort of, you know, putting your body, putting your mind, putting your spirit, putting your emotions into a state of certainty, into a state of conquering. That's how I like to call it, basically, right? And how I do that every single morning, right, is that I will get up every single morning, and I'll start my day with like a physical exercise, right? Now I will do that for like about 10 to like 15 minutes, basically, right? Or no, actually, from like about 15 to like about 30 minutes, basically, you know. So maximum half an hour, basically. where I'll just exercise and I'll move my body and start to get the blood flowing in throughout my body and stuff, and start to feel certain about myself. And Anthony Robbins said, emotion is controlled by motion. So if you want to change your emotions and how you feel, simply it's about moving, people. It's about moving, and it's about getting the right physiological patterns within your body, right? Then, of course, right, once I have that, I'm good, right? So as you guys can see, my boundary conditions, of course, is 15 to 20 minutes max. And then within that time, what are my specifications? Simply to move my body and stuff, so I get my whole blood throughout my body circulating, and that's it. And then of course it's a generic decision, as you guys know already, because I do it every single morning. So I have this rule every single morning, but it of course changes whether I'm in my house, whether I'm on holidays, etc. Then, of course, number 3, of course, I know it's right because it contributes to my more effective self, in the sense that I feel more vibrant in life, I guess. I just feel more control over my circumstances. I feel more empowered to actually do stuff in my life, through the day, because I have done that during the morning time, right? And then of course, after this, so like the 15-30 minutes of working out, then I spend another 20 minutes max of just reading a book, basically. Reading, either a like self-help book or some psychological book. So I'll read, for instance, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, The Art of Living by Epictetus. And I just read these books, basically, because then they help me understand as well, the importance of, controlling my thoughts, controlling my mind, understanding more about human psychology and what we like and what we don't like, and what we can do to change certain stuff, and so I start out my day like that, right? And then of course, I do it, of course, so I do it every single morning, and I've been doing it now for the past 6 months. And then of course, with the feedback analysis, right? What I did do before I had this certain effective decision that I do every single morning, right? I used to actually start out basically for the first month. I ran 1 month experiment where I actually went outside, jogged a bit, punched the wind a bit, just to get my their body intact and stuff, and then from there went directly into physical training, took a shower, and then was listening to like a YouTube, on some self-help, expert, or on some like motivational speaker, whether it's Anthony Robbins, Jim Rohn, etc. Right? But after I got feedback on that, right, I found out, for me especially, that's not the most effective way towards my outcome, right? I found out that in spite of doing that, right, it doesn't help me as much as actually reading a book, right? So with me, for instance, I do better reading than I do listening, for instance, to like a CD, or to like a YouTube, right? You could be different, of course. You could like more listening than actually reading and stuff. Again, it goes back to what Drucker said, right? Managing oneself. You have to understand what are your strengths, weaknesses, and how you learn better and how you don't, basically. So and of course that can only be done through experimentation, people. It's the only way. I think when people say planning, but they're planning too much into the future, I think is a wrong way to go. George, no, John Maynard Keynes said, um, um, that in the long run we are all dead. So like the thinking that you can just plan way ahead in the long run is quite misleading. It's all about experimentation, people. Peter Drucker said, right, results are gained by exploiting opportunities, not from solving problems. So that's what it's about. Now, of course, when it comes to optionality, right, and when it comes to effectiveness, that's a really important part about it, right? Effectiveness, of course, comes from habits, right? And of course, habits comes from a complex of practices, right? So it's all about practicing, right? As the saying goes, practice makes perfect, right? So you want that as well. Lastly, of course, I wanted to go on this important part about how we've changed from this agrarian education-based society into a knowledge society. And I just like to read you guys just a really small excerpt from the book, actually, because I think it wonderfully outlines basically how we've changed, right? So yeah, here it goes. Knowledge is not impersonal like money. Knowledge does not reside in a book, a data bank, a software program. They contain only information. Knowledge is always embodied in a person, carried by a person, created, augmented, or improved by a person, applied by a person, taught and passed on by a person, used or misused by a person. The shift to the knowledge society therefore puts the person in the center. In doing so, it raises new challenges, new issues, new and quite unprecedented questions about the knowledge society's representative, the educated person. So, what's the main takeaway from that excerpt? Simply that, like Peter Drucker said, right? We live in a world nowadays, people, where the power has been put in your hands, literally. I mean, think about, regress about, about doing the regress in the past, right? In the past, as what Peter Drucker mentioned in his book, Managing Oneself, right? If your father was a peasant, you were also a peasant. If your father was in the middle class, you were also in the middle class, right? But as what Peter Drucker said, right? Now we live in a world where the power and the opportunities, they're all put in your hands, right? And so it's about sort of getting out of this life of being in this sort of box life, even though I'm not really into this, I'm thinking outside of the box, right? Because there is no box really, But it's kind of like taking Steve Jobs said one time that that we're taught this erroneous understanding of life, that that we're taught that you are to like go to school, get good grades, get a high paying job, save money, have fun, have a nice time with your friends and your family, etc. Now, of course, that's all like the reasonable life. I'm not saying that's not good, but what Steve Jobs was saying is that he said that's a really limited life, people. Once you figure out the simple fact that everything in life, everything in life, was made up by people no smarter than you, and that you can take anything you want in life, and that you can mold it, you can change it, you can increase it, you can augment it, and by doing that, of course, you not only enhance your life, but you enhance the lives of your family, of your friends, of your community, etc. Right? Once you learn that, then your whole life changes, right? So just always have that in mind. We live in the knowledge society now, so the power has been put in your hands, really. Anyone can become the next Bill Gates. Anyone can become the next Mark Zuckerberg. I'm not saying that the odds are not against you, right? I'm not trying to jump all the way to the end, right? But you'd much rather live in a world now than in a world we had lived, 200-300 years ago. Trust me, people. So really, for those who want to read more about the book, I really highly recommend that you actually buy the book itself. It's $18 US. It'll change your life, people. I swear to God. This is about 60 years of like the management and of experiment work and knowledge in this book for you guys. So I hope that you guys like this video, and please, of course, write down any questions or any other concerns you guys have, and I'll be happy to answer it. Thanks, guys, and I'll see you guys on the next book review.